Hello and welcome back to A Drunk History of Middle-earth. This is a show where we take the legendarium created by J.R.R. Tolkien and have a good, simple, wholesome chat about it. Sometimes it's a drunk person, me, trying to explain stories or events, and sometimes it's breaking down the stories and concepts as if we're talking to a drunk person. I'm Chris, I'm an avid Tolkien nerd, I'm still learning and realising how much I actually don't know. And joining me is your co-host and my lovely wife Rebecca. Do you want to say hello?
Hello, I'm Rebecca, a complete novice to all things Tolkien and nerdy in general, although now I've watched all 3 films, extended editions, and can now confirm that I have been converted to the religion headed by L. Ron Tubbard.
Long may he live. Right.
Sultan.
That's the intro sorted. Let's get into today's episode. Okay, I've clicked record. We're back. Hello. We're undercover. We're trying to make everything sound better. Hello, Rebecca. How are you?
I'm alright, Christopher. I'm a bit perplexed and bewildered at this setup. Feel like I'm under the sea.
Yeah, same. Well, we're trying a new thing. We're trying to improve the sound quality of the episode, and so we are sat on the floor of our office with a couple of very thick blankets, a couple of chairs, and sat very close to the microphone trying to improve the sound quality, so let us know how it goes. But welcome back. It feels like it's been ages since we last recorded.
Because it has?
Well, it has been, yeah. We've been on holiday. We went to Ibiza. You've been ill. We thought you were going to die for a bit. You had some serious flu.
Yeah.
And yeah, luckily we had a couple of episodes in the can that we could kind of do. And today we're going to do a double feature. We're going to record this episode and then the next episode this afternoon after we've had a break. I'm going to go for a run. I was going to go for a run until you said you were ready to record, so I dropped everything. Hence why I've got my shorts on but not my running top. But yeah, how have you been the last few weeks?
It's been a series of highs and lows.
Yeah.
No, it's been good.
Yeah.
It's been good. And I'm feeling 10 times better, so...
Oh, do you want to tell everyone about yesterday? The quiz?
Oh, yes. So, I did a LOTR quiz.
Yeah.
Just off the cuff.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
No brain warming up or anything. And I only got 4 wrong. Out of 22, was it?
22, yeah. And some of the questions were a bit sus because one of the questions was, who's Sam's love interest? And Rosie was on there, but so was Frodo, so I didn't know which one to pick. Or which one I would have picked.
You're all for the brotherly love.
Yeah, it's non-toxic masculinity, platonic love. It's fucking great. Anyway, welcome back to the series where we talk about everything in Middle-earth beginning with an E. We've done Ents.
Elephants.
We've done elephant. We're not doing that. Fuck off. We've done Ents. We're doing Eagles now.
Eggs.
We might do Edoras, Emmental cheese. Is that in Middle-earth? Almost certainly not. But yeah, this week is Eagles. This has been a long time coming, and I think it's reflected in the research I've done because I've been writing the script for so long. I've been adding more and more things to it to the point where I made myself a JSTOR account, and I was reading a journal called something about Catholicism and literature.
Ah, yes, I tried to get that on my Open University.
Did it not work?
No.
Ah, the shitters.
I know I've got the subscription, but I couldn't access that article.
Oh well, okay. But yeah, I ended up looking at some really scholarly research about Tolkien, which is really going to play a part of my research going forward, to be honest, because it is incredibly valuable. And this is very naive of me as someone who reads. I read the books a lot. Like I was reading Unfinished Tales in my hammock yesterday about the Istar. I was reading a chapter about the Istari. And I've read the books, and I've got the History of Middle-earth series and all that, but I'd never looked at just how much scholarly work is done on Tolkien, which has kind of opened up a whole new world to me. But yes, today it's eagles. It's creatures that are super important, but also high and mighty arseholes. I'm not a fan of their lofty attitudes. Pun definitely intended. But yes...
I'm confused. What was the pun?
Fuck off. The great. What do you know about the great eagles of Middle-earth?
They're incredibly big
Big lads.
and they live on the tops of mountains.
Yeah.
And they are, they're like, they're all seeing and called upon to do like God's work.
Yeah,
almost.
you're not far off. Yeah. You're not far off. They're the chief servants of Manwë.
That's like as basic as I can try and
Yeah, no, you're right. They are.
make it without confusing myself, really.
Well, we'll talk about it in more detail. The Eagles of Middle-earth are the chief servants of Manwë, the highest king of Arda, and the leader of the Valar. They are mainly the eyes of the Valar and tend not to intervene in major ways. So just giving a helping hand here and there. Like Gwaihir once said to Gandalf, when he rescued him from the top of Orthanc, that he was sent to bear tidings and not burdens. And hence he set Gandalf down in Edoras so he could find Shadow. That's when he first got Shadowfax. Eagles. So should we talk about where they came from?
Yeah.
They were
Who came first, the chicken or the egg?
Well, the question should be, who came first, the Ent or the Eagle? Because they were created at the same time. Yavanna, as we've covered briefly in the Silmarillion, which we're going to go back to in a couple of weeks, Yavanna had went to Manwë to plead her case for the protection of her beloved trees. Do you remember when she found out about Aule making the dwarves? And Manwë sat and thought about it for a while, and Eru noticed that he was pondering it. So Eru sent to Manwë a vision of the Ainu Lindale again, and this time Manwë saw things in it that he hadn't seen before. He was given a second look at the vision, and he saw that Eru held the vision of Ea, the universe, in his hand, and more was revealed to Manwë. And so Manwë came out of his trance or his ponderings, and he went to Yavanna, and he told her that the Ents would be created. But he'd also seen that spirits would come and dwell in Ea and become eagles as well. And Manwë said that the eagles and Ents would come forth before the children of Iluvatar awoke. So Yavanna was super duper pleased at this, and she put her arms in the air and declared that her trees would grow tall for the eagles to be housed. However, Manwë informed her that they would only live in the trees of Aule, which I think is a really nice way of putting it, but it's the mountains. Like the eagles would live in the mountains. And they would hear the voices of those that called on the Valar, and the trees would be left for the Ents. So that's a pretty sweet deal all around for Yavanna. Like, cool. I don't have to worry. Like, I've got the Ents to protect my trees, and then I've not got eagles shitting on them.
Do you think eagle poop is like pigeon poop? Like, it's like acid, it erodes everything.
It's gotta be, right? Why is bird poop like that? Why is bird poop...
No, I think it's pigeon poo in particular because they eat everything.
But bird poop's like right, all white and runny, isn't it? Could you imagine if birds drop proper logs? Could you fucking imagine?
100 ways to die in countryside.
So I was in Newcastle city centre the other week, and there's lots of seagulls and pigeons around like the big monument.
Yeah.
Imagine walking around monument and you're just getting like clobbered.
No,
with
it would
shitlogs.
be exactly like going back to Victorian Britain, like before the invention of cars, and we just used horses.
Yeah.
There would just be masses of poo on the roads. Like the roads would be made up of poop, because imagine the volume of birds dropping massive logs.
Here's a question for you listeners: how much bird poo do you not notice on a day-to-day basis? How blind to bird poo are you?
Yeah.
I'm gonna look for it now, because imagine I don't know how we've got here, but imagine birds dropping logs instead of the little white stuff.
Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Going back to what Ents were, right? I was always of the opinion that they were Maiar.
Can we just stop? I got a good pun.
Go on.
Can we stop shit talking on this podcast, please?
Oh.
Right, go on.
That's a good pun. Fair enough. So I always thought eagles were Maiar, right? But it turns out Tolkien went back and forth on this pretty much till the end. He never really decided whether the eagles were truly Maiar or beasts raised to a higher level and given more intelligence by the Valar, which, either or. There are 4 named eagles that we meet throughout all 3 ages of Tolkien's Legendarium. There is Gwaihir, which means Wind Lord. It's pretty badass. Sounds like a MySpace name. Wind Lord.
Sounds like you're like alter ego on a night time.
I'm Windlord. So Gwahir is the chief of the Eagles in the Third Age, and he has a blunder. He has a brother called Landraval, which means broad-winged. I think Gwahir got the better name, to be honest. And in the Third Age, there is Meneldor, which means Heaven Lord, or Lord of the Heavens. And, of course, the biggest one, the one in the First Age, the one who is badass and scars Morgoth, Thorondor, whose name actually means the Lord of Eagles, of which he is in the First Age. There's others... So there's a bit of mystery around the Eagles, that once you start researching it, like, there's always these little tidbits and, like, inconsistencies and inaccuracies that just make the story richer, right?
Yeah.
There is the Lord of the Eagles, who isn't named but rescues Gandalf and company in The Hobbit. Do you know when they're in the trees outside the Misty Mountains and the wargs and orcs come?
Yeah.
I think it's just wargs in the book. But this eagle goes on to become the king of all birds by the end of The Hobbit. Now, if we ignore the fact, right, that The Hobbit was primarily written as a children's book and came before Lord of the Rings, so retroactively Tolkien had to make it fit to his massive world that he developed. It is a bit of a mystery who this bird is, though. It couldn't be Gwahir, because Gandalf says at the end of Lord of the Rings, he has been carried thrice by Gwahir. But if Gwahir was the great eagle mentioned, then Gandalf would have been carried by him about 5 times, I think. So the numbers don't fit. I did see one Reddit post that speculated that we don't know if eagles age, and we never explicitly hear that Thorondor dies when we're reading the Silmarillion, but that the Lord of Eagles could be still Thorondor, but we just see Gwahir and Landraval and Meneldor in the Third Age because he might be too important to be cutting about in the air all the time. He might just stay in like hidden mountains and stuff. But yeah, it would make sense. Like, a good leader delegates. So it might still be Thorondor that's in The Hobbit, and he just happens to... He might live in the Misty Mountains, so he was very nearby. Who knows?
Yeah.
So I had a look at some of the scholarly work written about the eagles and their symbolism. Not allegory, because remember, Tolkien doesn't like allegory. But from a Catholic point of view, I read a paper that speculated that the eagles are Tolkien's representation of the Holy Spirit acting in the world. And this would, and there was some parallels to, I think there was like Israelites or like in the Bible or something that was something to do with big birds there. I don't have it to hand, but I do remember just reading and all this evidence or speculation that the Holy Spirit was the eagles in Middle Earth, and that they weren't always directly active, but they were always there, they were always watching. And there was also some really cool allegory. So we know that Tolkien was a big... I think he studied Chaucer. Is it Chaucer? Chaucer, yeah. And in Chaucer, in this paper, it goes on to state that in Chaucer there are birds that are bigger than normal, are able to speak, and people are able to ride them. And they're also seen as like messengers of God. So there's some close parallels there, because obviously like Tolkien was...
Clearly took inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely. I also saw a bit that says that... so Tolkien coined this term eucatastrophe. Have you heard of it before?
No, I have not.
Well, eucatastrophe is a sudden good turn. When everything seems lost, it's a sudden good turn of fortune. That means the good guys are going to win. And Tolkien himself coined this term. So he's the originator of the term eucatastrophe. And the eagles can be seen as eucatastrophe. So in The Hobbit, at the Battle of Five Armies, they are... so the elves, men, and dwarves against the orcs and the wargs are getting trounced, right? Yeah. They're getting fucked until the eagles come. And the eagles help to turn the tide, along with Beorn, the big were guy. And then at the end of Lord of the Rings, when they're fighting at the Black Gates... all of a sudden the eagles come and they start fighting the Nazgul in the air, and then they're able to rescue Sam and Frodo. And bit sad, speculation that the third eagle sent was for Gollum, but obviously he didn't make it. So, when all seems lost, that's when they're able to finally come and act.
Change the tides.
Yeah, that's exactly what they do. It's the turning of the tide, and that's when all hope seems lost. It's that sudden act, that stroke.
So do you think they're sent from? They're sent by Manwë.
Yes, they are. So in the first age, I think Manwë hears a prayer and sends the eagles really quickly, or they act on those who beseech the Valar.
Which is funny because if only Eru knows the fate of the world, and they're just literally there to sort of look after things and keep things going nicely, then why would Manwë interfere? Because that might be part of the greater plan, is for them to fall.
It might be, yeah.
Or is it just he actively is pushing against, well, let's coin it the evil against good, like he is on the good side.
Well,
regardless of whether that's the fate.
Well, it's
or not.
The Valar aren't as passive as you're suggesting, which it's a very good point though. But also we need to remember that nothing anyone can do can ultimately mar the design of Eru's plan. So Manwë knows the heart of Eru the most. So I think he would know that him acting in what he believes is right ultimately will turn out for the best.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I think it's very easy. So I had this conversation with Sandy on Saturday, right? And we were talking about, is it tolerant to not tolerate the intolerant? And the answer that I was given when I was in college was, yes, you can still be tolerant by refusing to tolerate the intolerant, because if you don't have anything you will act on, or any kind of like hard lines that you will not transgress, you're not tolerant, you're passive. And I think the same applies to Manwë here, in that he will act and the eagles will act as they see best to preserve the good of the world, or to act for the good of the world. And ultimately, whatever they do anyway will serve the design of Eru. So it's kind of like, do you know how I don't know if there's a good equivalent
because
saying.
They're a creation of Eru.
Yeah, exactly. The Valar are children of Eru, just like the elves and the men. So you remember that Valar from our episode where we discussed it. They see themselves as our brothers and sisters. They don't see themselves as like lording it over us, even though Manwë is like king of Arda. But they see themselves as our brothers and sisters, and so that they're all working towards the great plan, which is that the ineffable plan.
For the greater good.
The great, yeah, yes, but is that? Yeah, the greater good.
The greater good.
I'm still stuck on Good Omens. That show stuck with me. Like,
I'm just thinking about Somerset and how much I want to go to where Hot Fuzz was filmed.
Yeah, we've got a trip to Somerset coming up for the week with the family, and we're going to go and see where Hot Fuzz was filmed. But yeah, so to cut that point short, I don't think Manwë acting and the eagles acting is contrary to the designs of Eru. But let's describe the eagles of Manwë. I'm pretty sure they're based on golden eagles, and they are fucking huge. So some rough sizing I found was that they're around 20 feet tall, which, what is that in meters?
Oh, you asked. No, I don't know.
6 meters?
Yes, the size of a giraffe.
Really?
Yes, giraffes grow between 5 and 6 meters.
Jesus.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was that big.
Yeah.
We've seen a giraffe. Do you remember? Oh my god!
I've seen multiple giraffes. I've fed.
Right. Well, that's creeped me out then, because that is fucking tall. So that's how tall they are.
Yeah. When you asked me earlier a question and I said it's the size of a giraffe.
Yeah.
And you looked at me funny.
Yeah, because I wasn't
just pulling that out of thin air.
No, it's because I was asking you about wingspan. So we've got that. So that's the average height. But then we've got the average wingspan of around 75 feet, which is 23 meters. But that's not the biggest. This was taken from the One Ring wiki. I couldn't find a concrete physical description though, so kind of like take that with a pinch of salt. But it is said that Thorondor was the biggest of the eagles, and his wingspan was 180 feet, or 55 meters, or 30 fathoms, whatever the fuck they are. Becca, how much is a fathom?
1.8 meter sticks.
Jesus.
It can't just be meters. It has to be meter sticks.
So, if his wingspan was 180 feet or 55 metres or 30 fathoms, What is that equivalent to? Like, is there any real world stuff you can think of? Because I asked you to look this up.
Right, so what I found, what I think you liked most was the Disney castle.
Yeah, Cinderella's castle.
However, I found an even better example
All right, go on.
from one of our favourite places, Italy.
Oh, go on.
So it's actually the size of the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
No.
Yeah.
So, like, if you put that on the ground, that's his wingspan.
Wingspan.
Jesus.
And it's not difficult to imagine when you think of something like Leaning Tower of Pisa because it's already wonky anyway, so
Yeah.
just stick an all
Tilt your head.
eagle head on the side of it and you're good to go.
Yeah, no, fair dues. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So the Disney castle is the same size as the Leaning Tower of Pisa.
Don't quote us on this,
yeah,
obviously. Like,
the more you
this
know.
We haven't gone and got our meter sticks and measured these places
Yeah.
because it would cost a fortune.
Well, the Eagles were sent from Valinor to watch over the exiled Noldor, who we haven't covered them yet, but they are a group of elves. And spoiler alert, Feanor is a big wanker who's a Noldor. But Galadriel, by the time of Lord of the Rings, I think Galadriel is the last Noldor left in Middle-earth. I might be wrong, but I think... I don't know what Celeborn is. Anyway. But they were sent to keep watch over the exiled Noldor and keep an eye on Melkor/Morgoth in Middle-earth. Their homes were mountains, as Manwë had mentioned, the trees of Aule, and the dwellings of Eagle, which I looked this up, is called an eyrie, which it just means it's a nest, a giant nest made in the mountain.
Isn't there an Eyrie in Harry Potter?
I don't know.
Let me try and find out.
Okay. While you're doing that, I'll carry on. But in the First Age, some of the notable events the Eagles took part in was wounding Morgoth in the face by clawing him after an epic battle between Morgoth and an elf king called Fingolfin, which I hope to cover at some day because it's fucking amazing. Thorondor clawed Morgoth's face and escaped with Fingolfin's body. They also carried Huor and Húrin to and from the hidden city of Gondolin, which they protected. So the Eagles protected the hidden city of Gondolin by keeping basically everyone away from it. So that Turgon, their king, he was really good friends with them. At one point, and this was pretty mental, they used to live at the top of the volcanoes near Angband called Thangorodrim. Do you remember those mountains that Morgoth raised, and they were just spewing fumes all the time? They lived there. That's pretty fucking ballsy.
Yeah.
Imagine living that close to danger. Jesus, that's like choosing to buy a house in a council estate. But choosing to buy the nicest house in a council estate and letting your neighbours...
Egg your windows.
No, not letting your neighbours see you move in with like your 60-inch telly.
Oof.
They eventually moved house to the mountains around the hidden city of Gondolin and helped the elves keep the city safe, like I mentioned. There's other instances where I won't go into them too much because it crosses into other stories that I want to cover. But they've rescued people like Beren and Luthien on their journey, and they aided the survivors when Gondolin fell, which, again, will be their own. That's two of the biggest stories to come out of the First Age, actually. They're two standalone novels, is Beren and Luthien and the Fall of Gondolin. But their biggest act, arguably, in the First Age was fighting alongside the armies of the Valar in the final, for now, downfall of Morgoth. So the War of Wrath, when basically Beleriand got fucked and smashed the mountains, let the sea in, it sank, and now we don't go to Beleriand anymore. In the Second Age, the Eagles had eyries in the King's House of Númenor in Armenelos, which was the capital of Númenor, and in Quenya means Royal Heaven Fortress. And every year, 3 eagles would appear at the top of the highest mountain in Númenor, which was called Meneltama, when offerings were made to Eru Ilúvatar during a religious ceremony called the Three Prayers. Now, interestingly, is that Númenorians, I think, is one of the only instances of Eru being openly worshipped in Middle-earth, which is pretty cool. These great eagles that showed up were called the Witnesses of Manwë, and 3 prayers were offered to Eru throughout the year. The first was the prayer to Eru, which took place in the spring. The second was the praise of Eru, which took place in midsummer. And the third was thanksgiving to Eru, which took place in autumn. And this was similar to celebrations held in Valinor around the same time. I know I went a bit deep there. Númenor is a massively expansive subject of life there in itself, so we'll keep it brief. However, the Númenórean king or queen would climb the mountain and make a speech. And that's special because Meneltarma was a sacred place, and the law was to keep absolutely silent while climbing the mountain. And the eagles being present there was seen as a sign that Manwë approved of the deed. And in fact, the eagles were the only animals on the mountain at all due to how sacred it was. Imagine how refreshing it would be to climb a mountain knowing there wasn't going to be any fucking mosquitoes. Even if you had to keep quiet the whole time.
I'd be dying still.
Yeah, it was a very steep mountain.
I would be sweaty, messy. It would just be awful. I'm imagining this as like Hawaii again.
Oh, yeah, we climbed Diamond Head Crater, didn't we?
Those never-ending stairs.
Oh,
and like
it was amazing.
trying to pretend as if I wasn't a chunk dying while I was climbing them, while everyone was like running past.
Oh, it was great though. It was so much good. It was so good when we got to the top. Yeah, it said that from the top of Meneltarma, you could look west and see Tol Eressëa, which is the first part of Valinor, you know, the island that was off the coast. And of course, the Númenóreans were forbidden from sailing west out of sight of their own shores so that they weren't allowed in Aman. Another part of Númenor where giant eagles could be found in the Second Age was the mountain Sorontil in the north of Númenor. This name just literally translates to eagle horn, and according to the Encyclopedia of Arda, was home to many eagles in the Second Age. So speaking of eagles in Númenor, when shit went south and Númenor was acting up because of Sauron corrupting them, well, they were already on their way there, but by the time we got to the king Ar-Pharazôn, it was getting pretty wild. Manwë sent an eagle-shaped cloud as a warning to Númenor during a period called the Great Armament, when the Númenóreans, the height of men, at the height of like human civilization, arguably, was getting ready to invade Valinor. It was accompanied by a lightning bolt and fire that killed people, which I found fascinating because the Valar aren't allowed to kill us, and they're not allowed to directly interfere with us. So I wonder, did he just stop us from being killed by natural disasters? Like, did he just say, like, because as soon as Ar-Pharazôn stepped foot in Valinor, the Valar laid down their governance of Arda. They said, Eru, we can't do this anymore. We're not allowed to kill them, but they're coming here. We don't know what to do. And that's when Eru caused Númenor to sink into the ocean and the whole army of Ar-Pharazôn to be buried beneath the waves in somewhere called the Caves of the Forgotten. But them doing that seems to contradict the fact that lightning and fire was killing people when they were going to invade Valinor. So what the fuck?
Maybe so like this time round they use that as an excuse. They're like, oh well, it wasn't us. It's the weather.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, something.
We didn't technically kill.
Yeah, we didn't technically kill you.
It was the arsenic.
Hey, you were stood where that lightning struck, man. 12 times.
Exactly.
Yeah, maybe. Side note is that the downfall of Númenor is called the Akalabeth, and during this event, the lightning and fire wrecked the temple to Morgoth that had been erected in the middle of the city of Armenelos. And this is pretty metal, but at the time all this was going on, Sauron was stood on the roof of the temple just laughing because he thought that the Valar, he was like, haha, convinced Númenor to go and fuck themselves up. And then he got his like, oh shit moment when all the waves came and he drowned and had to escape back to Middle-earth. But yeah, I couldn't find a satisfactory answer as to why the lightning storms killed Númenorians directly when the Valar were supposed to abstain from using their power against the Atani. I'm hoping a listener can enlightening us. Oh, fuck you. It's terrible. But the history of the eagles, going back to them.
He is funnier in real life, you know, guys.
Why
really.
Why you got to do me like that? The history of the eagles in the Second Age doesn't much go past the downfall of Númenor, which, as you can imagine. So we can assume that the ones of Númenor got the fuck out of Dodge and went to Middle-earth. And I couldn't find an answer to this, but I did wonder if any of them just kind of went back west to Valinor and were like, can I make my home on Tanaquetil? I can't be arsed anymore. Fuck knows. And then we get to the Third Age of Middle-earth, which is the events of Lord of the Rings and what have you. In the Third Age, they were instrumental in rescuing the dwarves from the orcs and the wargs of the Misty Mountains. And that was during the events of the Hobbit, where they carried them to a place called the Carrock, which, so do you know at the end of the first film where they set them down?
Yeah.
That's the Carrock, which is a stone outcropping near where Beorn lives, which obviously makes sense. The eagles would then be seen again later in that story at the Battle of Five Armies, where they appeared and turned the tide as things started to look grim. Bilbo shouts, The eagles are coming, which, as I mentioned, that's an example of eucatastrophe.
Oh,
What were you going to say?
I was going to say uncatastrophe.
Close enough, close enough. However, we don't know the specifics of that battle because it's from the point of view of Bilbo, who gets knocked out, and we only learn what happens later. The films do not count. During the events of Lord of the Rings, they then rescued Gandalf from Orthanc and retrieved Frodo and Sam from Mount Doom.
Very boiling hot,
Yeah.
volcanic side of the mountain.
Yeah. They're also spotted several times through the story from afar by Legolas, and I
Do you think these are moments that are reflected on when he looks out into the distance randomly?
I think in the films that might be, yeah, but in the books it's much more explicit. He says I can see a great eagle wheeling about, and
Well, that could some of those moments then.
Orlando Bloom did a lot of staring off into the distance
did.
during those films. So
And you never know why he's doing it.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know.
Never know. It is said somewhere, I think, that it is Gwaihir overseeing the mission as Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas are hunting for Merry and Pippin. So it's them watching. It's them watching and making sure. So Manwë is taking an interest. Like I said, Gwaihir rescued Gandalf from the top of Orthanc. The difference is in the books, Gwaihir just happens to be nearby when he spots Gandalf because he was coming to give Gandalf news of what was happening. So was kind of looking for him already. And found him in prison. In the movies, they've got that moth thing going on where the moth summoned Gwaihir, but blah, blah, blah. And Gwaihir couldn't or wouldn't take him far, so he sent him down in Edoras to find a horse, and that's where Gandalf got Shadowfax. Later on, Galadriel asked Gwaihir again to find Gandalf, and this is where he found him at the top of the mountain Celebdale after fighting the Balrog and dying, so that's how he got down from the mountain. Naked when he died.
Oh, yeah. I wondered about that.
Yeah. So, interestingly, from this paper I was reading, never spotted this before, Gandalf dying and coming back as Gandalf the White, awfully Jesus-like.
Resurrection.
Never noticed that before. Gwaihir is the one who brought Gandalf to Lothlorien. So, arguably, if we go down this path, the Holy Spirit he was resurrected, and the Holy Spirit was responsible for him being reintroduced back into the world because he was at the top of the mountain and he was brought back down by Gwaihir. So, yeah. And then finally, in Lord of the Rings, Gwaihir, Landroval, and Menheldor were the three of the eagles that helped during the last battle, of the War of the Ring, which is called the Battle of the Morannon. And this is where they fought against the Nazgul. And things weren't going great for the good guys until Frodo put on the ring. So it wasn't the ring being destroyed that turned that tide of the battle. It was Frodo failing his mission and putting the ring on, revealing himself to Sauron, and then so that the Nazgul pulled back so quickly, caused massive confusion amongst Sauron's armies, because their leaders essentially just fucked off straight away. And then once the ring was destroyed, it was Gwaihir, Landroval, and Menheldor who went to retrieve Sam, Frodo, and possibly Gollum. Maybe Gandalf thought that, in the end Gollum might be redeemed because at a certain point Gandalf himself says, even the wise cannot see all ends.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately he wasn't redeemed. But, fortunately, this served Eru's plan anyway. So maybe Gollum did more good by being evil than being good.
Yeah, it's part of the overall plan.
Yeah, it's part of the plan.
Oh,
what?
It's so philosophical, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. You should see how many articles come up when you search Tolkien on JSTOR or Google Scholar. Yeah. Another embodiment of eucatastrophe that's only in the books is an eagle was sent to Minas Tirith to inform Faramir and Éowyn of the victory at the Battle of the Morannon against the Holy Spirit bearing good news. And that's pretty much them in the story. There's not much in the Fourth Age and beyond. Maybe they're still out there, giant eagles in the mountains somewhere. Fuck knows. But the final point I'd like to bring up really is there's always the question of why didn't the eagles just fly the ring to Mordor? And I didn't want to cover this, but I would like to say go fuck yourself. It's a meme at this point. But I will give you some answers. 1. The story would be short and shit if they did that. 2. The need for secrecy was of utmost importance. Else, the whole country of Mordor would have been on them in a flash. orcs have bows and arrows, and Nazgul have fell beasts. And I think it's the Hobbit, but at some point the eagles do mention, like, we fear to go into like certain places because men have bow and arrows. So yeah, fair enough. 3, very short and to the point. Imagine an eagle falling to the temptation of the ring. Fuck, yeah, fuck that. That would be terrifying. And 4 is, I wondered about this. So Gandalf is a servant of the Valar and is prohibited from using all of his powers to help.
Yeah.
The eagles might be under a similar constraint. They'd never really directly intervene until they absolutely have to. So, you know.
I feel bad for downplaying the eagles so much after this episode.
Yeah, you should.
I just always thought they were a mode of transport.
Oh, you dick. Well, now you know. Now you know. And that is the end of what we know really about the Great Eagles. There is other times in the First Age in particular where they intervene or they're involved, but those are best left to the stories that they're contained in. But yeah, sorry, what we said?
So, you know how Radagast uses them crazy ass rabbits
Yeah. In the
to
films.
pull his sled
Yeah.
in the films? Are they like higher beings?
That's a film invention,
Is it? Oh.
so probably not.
Right, okay then.
Yeah,
Waste of
unfortunately.
question.
No, it's fine. So, like, we were talking about this on holiday about, like, the beasts of Middle-earth. So you got the wargs, or the wargs, who are spirits in animals. The eagles are pretty much the same, so, yeah. But Radagast, I think, does... He interacts with the eagles at some point. Like, he tells them to, like, where to find Gandalf and stuff, but... Yeah.
But they're not just transport.
No, they're not. No, they are messengers. They see pretty much everything.
So how many eagles do you think have lived?
Hundreds. Hundreds. I'd conservatively say hundreds. I don't think thousands. Because
Because we're not sure how long they live for.
yeah, well,
And
Tolkien.
their age and
Yeah,
process.
I'd say hundreds because Gwaihir allegedly is a descendant of Thorondor, so they must reproduce.
And they're the great eagles.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Tolkien himself says that the eagles, as a literary device, need to be used almost sparingly because otherwise, you ruin the effect of them.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how did this episode feel for you? Like, we've got to a point now where you've got a really good grip on the lore, and like as I was mentioning when I was reading this article and I was sending you screenshots of it and stuff, like we're starting to branch into looking at real world influences and links to like classic literature and stuff like that. So like, how are you feeling now that we're starting to cross over into areas that you're more comfortable with?
Cool, because I've got more. I can input more.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's getting easier to remember the names. But there's still times where I feel like my eyes
Well,
are drooping.
talking about
because-
names, wait until next episode because there is a lot of names and a lot of different names for the same
no.
thing, depending on which language you're speaking.
And whenever you say Galadriel or that other name that begins with a J.
I don't know.
Anyway, I always think, if you live in the UK, I always think of Aldi blue cans of beer.
Oh.
And they're called Galashield, I think.
Oh, no.
So I always imagine, unfortunately, Galadriel
You're disgusting.
and the association with beer.
Ugh.
But this is the drunk podcast.
Yeah, true.
So,
Well, would you like this week's fun fact? It's a bit lighter, this one. It's a bit of a palate cleanser.
okay.
What do you think Tolkien's favourite race is?
Elves.
I thought that. But in letter 213, or 213 for the learned amongst us, he described himself as a hobbit. And I'd like to... I was surprised because of how much he loves the elves. But earlier in the letter, he said he didn't like the focus on the that critics have on the authors themselves, and he believes that it detracted from discussions of their works. And he wrote a letter to one Deborah Webster in late 1958 and said, because she asked about like some interesting facts about him, he said, "I am in fact a hobbit in all but size. I like gardens, trees, and unmechanized farmlands. I smoke a pipe and like good plain food, unrefrigerated, but detest French cooking. I like, and even dare to wear in these dull days, ornamental waistcoats. I am fond of mushrooms out of a field, have very simple sense of humour, which even my appreciative critics find tiresome. I go to bed late and get up late when possible. I do not travel much. Which I thought was a lovely...
Sounds like me.
Yeah.
Just minus the waistcoat.
Yeah, you're very Hobbit-like. I just thought it was a lovely little thing.
Yeah, that sounds quite cute and quaint, and just imagine him as a hobbit now.
Yeah.
I just felt like he was... But that doesn't suggest that that was his favourite, does it really?
Well,
It says that's what he identifies with the most as a character.
Yeah, true.
But, well, as a race, but in terms of the amount of literature he wrote about elves, that would kind of suggest that he liked elves, and the idea of elves, he developed so much that you would think they would be his favourite.
True. And that brings us to the end of today's episode. So we're going to have a wee little break. I'm going to go for a run, have some lunch, and then we'll hit back this afternoon and record the next episode. But yous won't hear it for another couple of weeks.
Yeah, and everyone, think about who you identify with the most.
Yeah.
Are you a hobbit? Are you an elf?
Yeah. What's everyone's favourite race?
Are you an Ent?
I'm a dwarf. Straight up dwarf life. But yeah, that's it. So goodbye from me.
And goodbye from Becca, and I'm going to go foraging in the fridge for my mushrooms.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.